Many of your beliefs about loyalty are not true. They never were. They were invented to maintain order, to allow systems and people to function without having to confront the truth. You were taught to believe that loyalty is a virtue, that people stay by your side out of honor, love, or moral code. You were taught to view the world through a filter of hope and ideals. And perhaps a part of you still wants to believe that. It is easier, safer, less painful, but it is not true. Machiavelli was not cynical. He was observant. He noticed what most people choose to ignore. Loyalty is not a stable principle. It is not a constant. It is a tool, a reaction to circumstances, a decision that arises when benefits outweigh costs. When the balance shifts, loyalty does not negotiate. It does not question. It does not resist. It leaves. And yet, your mind still searches for examples that contradict this reality. A friend who stayed with you in difficult times, someone who made a sacrifice, a bond that lasted for years. This reflex is natural. It is the instinct to protect the image of a stable world, to maintain the illusion of safety. But truth does not need protection. It exists regardless of what you want to believe. And if you look closely enough, you will see that these examples do not contradict the rule. They confirm it. Loyalty arises only when the cost of betrayal is greater than the benefit. Simple. Nothing more, nothing less. People do not choose to be loyal out of inner goodness or absolute morality. Their bodies calculate before the mind has time to comprehend. The brain is programmed to maximize advantage, security, and position. Values, ethics, ideals are added afterward to justify decisions already made subconsciously. When someone remains by your side, they do not do it out of virtue. They do it because leaving would cost more. Perhaps socially, perhaps emotionally, perhaps in terms of reputation or identity. People are not silent heroes. They are subconscious accountants calculating invisible balances, and the balance is always moving. The problem is not that people are this way. The problem is that you were taught to believe they are not. You were trained to interpret behavior through what people say, not through what they do. You were conditioned to listen to promises, not observe consequences. And this made you vulnerable, not because you are weak, but because you were sincere in a world that operates on different rules. Machiavelli understood that power does not rely on the hope that people will do what is right. Power relies on anticipating what they will do when circumstances change, and circumstances always change. Today, you are useful. Tomorrow, you are a problem. Today, you are respected. Tomorrow, you are ignored. Loyalty does not protect you from these transitions. It only delays them. Observe how people invoke loyalty, especially when they are afraid of losing it. The powerful rarely ask for loyalty. They create contexts in which leaving becomes costly. It is subtle, but essential. When someone asks for your loyalty, they are already admitting they cannot control it. Our biology makes us adapt quickly to hierarchies. The brain constantly searches for the center of power, even when you believe you are acting morally. You follow people not because they are good, but because they appear stable. You leave them not because they are bad, but because they appear weak. This is not cruelty. It is efficiency. Socially, loyalty is currency. It exchanges for protection, access, position. When advantages stop being delivered, the currency loses value. No one keeps a currency that can no longer buy anything. Only idealists do. And idealists are the first to be consumed. Perhaps you have already felt this. A friend disappears exactly when you need them. A community excludes you when you become a burden. A relationship cools not because love died, but because utility disappeared. In that moment, you feel confusion, perhaps anger, perhaps shame. but you lack the mental framework to understand what had happened. You assumed it was personal. Rarely is it. When Machiavelli says that people are loyal only when it suits them, he is not saying they are bad. He is saying they are consistent with their nature. Nature does not care about your internal story. It cares about survival and positioning. Emotions are tools, not moral guides. Once you understand the simple rule of loyalty, that it arises only when advantage demands it, the next step is to observe how it is exploited. Most people do not see this. They fall into the trap of expectation. They believe that people will act as it would be right to act. They are wrong. Those who understand the game do not ask for loyalty. They do not hope. They create conditions in which leaving would cost too much. Subtly, without shouting, without threatening, simple, natural, inevitable. Betrayal is not a surprise. It is inevitable if you do not understand the rules, and yet most people react as if struck out of nowhere. Anger, disappointment, shame, all primitive old emotions that only weaken. In reality, betrayal is information. It is a mirror of your perceived value. Wait. Understand what it tells you about yourself and about those around you. There are two kinds of people in such moments: those who flail and those who observe. Those who flail lose ground. Those who observe gain clarity. Betrayal is not a threat. It is a signal. It is a window into the true nature of people. And nature does not care about morality, promises, or hopes. You've been conditioned to look for reasons, excuses, justifications. It is normal. It is comfortable. But truth does not need excuses. Observe behavior. Note consequences. Do not react. Do not judge. Simply see. And then decide. Power is not about controlling people. Power is about not being controlled by your reactions to them. Once you understand this, any emotion becomes unnecessary. Anger no longer protects. Disappointment no longer justifies. Only clarity remains, and clarity gives you the freedom to move pieces on the invisible board of relationships and interests. A true leader does not ask for loyalty. They impose it without asking. They create structures and contexts in which leaving would be costly, useless, inconvenient. This is the subtlety of power. No one stays by your side out of virtue. They stay because leaving would be too complicated, too risky, too expensive. This is reality, cold and unforgiving. Understand this: people do what suits them. When convenience disappears, so do they. This is not a warning. It is not advice. It is observation, clear, brutal, objective. And recognizing this reality changes everything. Very few people are aware of this. They believe loyalty is given, that it will withstand time and circumstances. It is the illusion everyone cultivates. And the moment you lose that illusion, you see the world as it truly is. People are useful when you serve their interests, not when you earn their heart or approval. This realization produces an invisible yet powerful effect. You stop asking, stop waiting, stop hoping. You learn to observe. Every action becomes a signal, every departure, a lesson, every change in behavior, information about your value in the eyes of others. This is not cruel. It is logical. It is real. It is survival. Emotions are useful only when their decisions contribute to your position, not when they guide you through the illusion of morality. The world does not reward innocence, good intentions, or sincere fidelity. The world rewards advantage, position, and the ability to anticipate. Consider how people manipulate loyalty. Not all, but most do it unconsciously. They create dependencies, offer selective benefits, accentuate the costs of absence. They do not shout, they do not threaten, They do not dramatize. They simply configure the environment so that loyalty becomes the rational choice. And those who do not see it are surprised when departure occurs. This is the difference between power and illusion. Those who react emotionally expose themselves. Those who understand the game observe and wait. They no longer invest in people who provide no ongoing value. They no longer hope for fidelity beyond interest, and they are no longer surprised by betrayal. While others ask, "Why did they betray me?" you simply record the facts. You do not look for blame, you look for patterns. It does not matter who is moral, who swore loyalty, who promised support. What matters is who remains when advantage becomes cost. This is the true measure of relationships. Once you understand this, an internal calm settles. It is not the comforting calm of optimism. It is wait, silence, awareness, primitive emotions, anger, pain, frustration, lose control over your decisions. You become an observer, an accountant of invisible reality. This wait does not paralyze. It provides clarity. It becomes the foundation of strategic decisions. It no longer matters who promises, who shouts, or who manipulates. What matters is who chooses to stay, who is necessary, who is relevant, and most importantly, you become the stable point of reference. Those who do not understand this remain captive to their emotions. They try to save lost relationships. They seek approval from people who do not give it. They suffer for ideals that do not exist. You no longer do this. You see the game. You observe the mechanism. You understand that loyalty is a temporary reaction to advantage, and nothing more. Once you recognize that loyalty is nothing more than a conditioned reaction, you begin to see the world through a different filter. There is no longer surprise, no longer naivety. Everything becomes predictable. Every gesture, every promise, every silence becomes a signal. Those who do not understand this still flail, trying to shape reality through hope. You no longer do this. You observe. You analyze, you wait. You observe who clings to you for advantage and who stays out of habit. You observe who manipulates your dependencies and who uses benefits to control you. And in that moment, you do not feel anger. You do not feel betrayed. You feel clarity, a quiet but heavy stillness, a place where emotions no longer dictate decisions. Power in this world is not about who shouts the loudest or draws the most attention. Power is about who can remain unmoved while everything around them fluctuates. It is about the ability to calculate, to anticipate, and to use information that others overlook. It is about calm that becomes a weapon more effective than any anger or appeal to morality. Betrayal is not a defeat, it is an indicator. A signal that tells you exactly what costs and benefits exist around you. It does not matter if you like it or not. It does not matter if you feel pain. Simply observe, record, adjust. This is the difference between someone who survives and someone who allows themselves to be trapped by the illusion of morality. While others engage emotionally, you remain strategic. You do not rush to fill the gaps left by departures. You do not hang your ego on promises. You do not seek validation. Instead, you note patterns. You observe who reacts impulsively and who weighs the cost of every decision. This observation becomes an invisible advantage. Those who do not understand the mechanism of loyalty remain captive to illusion. They hope that people will be what they ought to be. They invest in fidelity, in appreciation, in approvals that do not exist. You no longer do this. You understand that loyalty is an effect, not a cause. And through this awareness, you become invulnerable to the emotional reactions of others. Strategy does not require overt manipulation or aggression. It relies on structure, on clarity, on positioning. You create contexts in which loyalty becomes logical. not through force, not through appeals to morality, but through reality. People remain by your side when leaving would be too costly or too inconvenient. This is subtle power. This is power that does not shout, does not ask, and does not depend on approval. This understanding changes everything in your relationships. Instead of being surprised by betrayal, you prevent it. Instead of feeling vulnerable, you become stable. Instead of asking for loyalty, you create conditions in which it is the rational choice for those around you. It is an invisible but powerful exchange of energy. And over time, it becomes the mechanism through which you control your world without forcing or threatening. Once you internalize these rules, emotional reactions become primitive. Anger, disappointment, panic, all lose power over you. Now you decide, you do not react, you observe, you do not engage. And in that state of detachment, you become difficult to read, invisible in vulnerability, indestructible in the perception of others. This is the transformation that occurs when you accept reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. You no longer seek validation. You no longer wait for loyalty. You no longer hope for kindness. All that remains is clarity and the ability to anticipate behavior. This is the foundation of self-mastery. Those who continue to believe in loyalty as a moral principle will suffer. They will be surprised by departures, betrayals, and shifts in interest. They will react impulsively, wasting their energy and position. You do not. You see the game, interpret it, and use it. This is not cynicism. It is lucidity, brutal, clear, inevitable. And in that space of lucidity, you begin to understand something essential. Real power does not lie in controlling people. It lies in not being controlled by them. It lies in the ability to remain stable while everything around you fluctuates. It lies in the capacity to observe costs and benefits instead of clinging to illusions. Once you understand this principle, you perceive every relationship differently. You no longer ask, "Who loves me?" or "Who is loyal to me?" The question becomes, who is relevant? Who remains when the cost rises? And this question redefines your entire interaction with people. It redefines your power and position in any social context. As you stop reacting emotionally, something subtle begins to change around you. People sense it before they can explain it. They feel that you are no longer easily moved, that you no longer respond automatically, that you no longer offer direct access to yourself through emotion. This change is not declared, it is not announced, but it is noticed, and it produces an effect. Those accustomed to gaining loyalty through emotional pressure become confused. Those who manipulated through guilt or promises notice that their mechanisms no longer work, not because you resist, but because you no longer participate. Your emotional withdrawal is not a flight, it is a repositioning. True power does not manifest through direct control, it manifests through the absence of reaction. When you no longer respond impulsively, when you no longer explain, when you no longer justify, you create a void, and people hate the void. They try to fill it with assumptions, with anxiety, with attempts to regain control. You remain silent, stable, observant. This stability creates a new hierarchy, without declarations, without confrontation. Those who are used to leading through emotion lose ground. Those confident in their influence begin to feel uncertainty, because they can no longer read you. And what cannot be read cannot be easily controlled. At this point, loyalty begins to settle around you differently, not as emotional attachment, but as a rational decision. People stay not because they like you, but because your presence brings stability, clarity, direction. They sense that with you, things do not spiral out of control. And in an unstable world, this becomes extremely valuable. Notice how those who previously disappeared at the first cost begin to pay more attention, more calculated. Not because they have changed, but because the cost-benefit ratio has shifted. You no longer offer free access. You no longer offer reactions. You no longer offer emotional energy without structure. And this changes everything. This is a lesson few learn. Most believe they must be better, more generous, more open to earn loyalty. Wrong. Generosity without position creates consumers, not allies. Openness without boundaries creates exploitation, not respect. Loyalty arises when your presence carries weight and leaving carries cost. As you become more reserved, more calculated, more clear, you begin to see who adapts and who disappears. Some will never return. For them, the lack of emotional access is too great. Others will remain, but in a different form. More respectful, more attentive, more engaged. Do not be surprised. It is the natural reaction to your repositioning. At this stage, you no longer need to test people. Time does it for you. The natural pressure of circumstances brings the truth to the surface. Who remains when you no longer offer emotional comfort? Who disappears when you are no longer easily used? Who approaches when they sense your internal stability? This filtering is not intentional. It is not a conscious selection strategy. It is a side effect of self-mastery. When you stop seeking loyalty, you attract it in a colder, more calculated, yet more predictable form. And paradoxically, just when you no longer need it, you become harder to abandon. Because you no longer depend on the reactions of others. You are no longer bound to their presence or absence. You remain constant, and constancy is rare. Those who understand this become fixed points in a volatile world, not because they are invincible, but because they are clear. Your clarity becomes a form of authority, not imposed, accepted. People gravitate toward those who do not get lost in emotions, do not dissolve in expectations, and do not collapse at the first sign of rejection. At this point, you no longer speak about loyalty, you no longer explain, you no longer teach lessons. You live according to the real rules of the game, and those who are capable of adapting remain. The others disappear without noise, and you do not stop them. You do not condemn them. You do not chase them. Their departure is not a loss. It is clarification, freed space, a reduction of noise. Each absence strengthens your position. This is the phase in which power becomes silent. You no longer feel the need to prove anything. You no longer explain who you are. You no longer negotiate respect. It appears or it does not. And if it does not affect you, because it is no longer necessary. In this silence, something stabilizes definitively. You no longer live in reaction. You no longer depend on promises. You no longer invest in loyalty as an ideal. Your investment is in position, in clarity, in internal control. The rest aligns or disappears. In the end, what remains is not loyalty, nor approval, nor recognition. What remains is something harder to articulate, yet far more powerful: your internal stability. A state of silent observation, of invisible clarity. You no longer expect anything from others. You no longer seek validation. You no longer suffer for illusions. Everything that arises around you becomes information, not emotion. Those who must leave do so. Those with real interest remain. And you do not react. There is no surprise, no attack or defense. Everything becomes observable, measurable, predictable. In this state, you are no longer bound to the fluctuations of the outer world. They happen, but they no longer influence your decisions. This detachment is not passivity, it is total control. Control that is unseen, unannounced, yet dictates real effects. The emotions of others, their attempts at manipulation, their subtle conflicts, all of these become simple variations on a board you do not need to change. You are the fixed point. People react to you, not because you demanded loyalty, not because you imposed order, but because you no longer participate in their emotional games. You no longer offer impulses. You no longer offer unnecessary incentives. There is no weak point. At this stage, time becomes your ally. Every departure, every betrayal, every hesitation is an indicator. It does not affect you emotionally. It informs you strategically. Every shift in interest confirms your position. Every adjustment of others' loyalty strengthens your understanding. And you continue, unmoved, calculating. Looking back, you realize that the illusion of loyalty, which you once thought sacred, was never anything more than a tool for manipulation and survival for others. And precisely because you stopped idealizing it, you have gained invisible territory. Territory that cannot be attacked, lost, or compromised. It is the silence within you, solid, hard to reach. This inner weight changes the perceptions of others without you saying or doing anything. They feel the difference. They feel it in your stability, in the absence of your emotional reaction, in the fact that you are no longer accessible through manipulation. They try to test your limits and discover that your boundaries are no longer what they assumed. In the end, there is no anger, no regret, no need to prove anything. Everything reduces to pure observation, to understanding mechanisms, and to your constant position. The reactions of others become irrelevant to who you are. Their presence no longer dictates your state. In this detachment emerges a psychological weight that no one can contest. This is the knowledge that remains when you stop seeking loyalty, when you stop asking for approval, and when you stop hoping for the virtue of others. Everything becomes clear, inevitable, and objective. Every departure, every change, every betrayal is simply what it is. Not an attack, not an insult, not a tragedy, just reality. And in this space, something stabilizes definitively. No more impulsive reactions, no unnecessary tensions, no more surprises, no more expectations. There is only observation and balance. This state is not comfortable, it is not reassuring, but it is heavy, it is solid. And for those who do not know it, it inspires tacit respect, subtle fear, and the recognition that here there is no weakness, there is no motivation, there is no encouragement, there is no hope. This is not a victory, it is not triumph, it is simply the necessary adjustment of mind and position to truth. And the truth is that people are loyal only when it suits them. And you now no longer depend on their convenience. The world continues to move, to manipulate, to deceive, and to react. But you remain unmoved, you observe, you understand. You are no longer caught in primitive emotions. There is no more panic, surprise, or frustration. All that remains is the weight of your silence, the clarity of your decisions, and complete detachment from the emotional flow of those around you. And so, it ends. Without shouts, without drama, without false comfort. All that remains is pure knowledge. The loyalty of others is nothing more than a reaction to advantage, and you are no longer affected by it. It is an internal weight, a solid calm, a detachment that makes emotional reactions seem primitive. In this space, you are fully aware and fully free. Not through love, not through approval, but through silence and absolute control.